Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to this learning experience brought to you by Snowflake. My name is Cody, and I'd love to welcome you back to Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting program ahead, but before we get things going, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review. First of all, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or maybe share with a friend. You will be receiving an email after the webinar concludes with a link to access the recording on demand. So if you would like to engage with us, engage with your fellow audience members, you can do so using the chat tab on the right side of your screen. Right next to that chat tab, you'll find a Q&A tab. If you do have any questions for our speakers, we do want you to send those questions to that Q&A. I'm not sure how much time we do have set aside for live Q&A at the end, so we're going to make sure that all of these questions get captured and sent back over to the Snowflake team, just in case they aren't addressed today. Finally, before we close things out, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of our program. Our topic today is Enrich Security Investigations with ServiceNow Asset Data in Snowflake, and I'm joined by Techstrong, Senior Threat Detection Engineer at Snowflake, and Tom Larkin, Senior Manager of Client Systems DevOps at Snowflake. So Tammy and Tom, thank you both so much for joining us today. But Tom, do you want to go ahead and take it away from here?
Hi, my name is Tom Larkin. I am a Senior Manager of Client Systems and DevOps here at Snowflake. I've been at Snowflake for 4.5-ish years. I joined Snowflake during the kind of late startup phase, and I started as an individual contributor as a one-person team. And over the past 4.5 years, I've built the client platform team out here at Snowflake, and now I manage it. As of February this year, I'm the manager. Previously, I worked at IBM and Jamf Software. And
Hi.
here's
Thanks, Tom. Hi, I'm Tammy. I've been in tech for the past 9 years. My career has developed pretty organically. I started out in customer support to IT support, then security operations, incident response, then now specifically threat detection here at Snowflake, where I've been for a little over 2.5 years. I love being in this space because it's always changing and I'm always learning. And I'm really excited to be here to share my experience with asset data.
So here's our agenda for today's webinar. Why is asset inventory so difficult? How to gain more visibility with asset data in your Snowflake instance? How to ingest ServiceNow asset data into your Snowflake instance? And different ways to leverage the data for IT and security use cases. So I think we all know that asset inventory data is tough. It's oftentimes inaccurate. There's a lot of data drift. You have manual processes here and there. Even if you fully automated asset inventory onboarding from one of your resellers or vendors, not every vendor is equal. And then you have all these various kind of stages of the life cycle of an asset, which generally at some point requires a human to go in and adjust knobs and set data states in your asset tracker. And all of that can, leave your asset data inaccurate and kind of just a pain to manage overall. So we all know that having an asset or an accurate asset inventory data set is extremely beneficial, right? And it is beneficial not only just for, one specific team, but many teams across the board. And, a lot of just simple use cases that we find here at Snowflake with asset data on this slide here, like for one, we integrate HR data to asset data in ServiceNow. So we get things like leave of absence and VIP status that's pulled from HR data. Security obviously has a big stake in asset data because for someone like threat detection or incident response, knowing that the laptop or computer belongs to a senior cloud architect that has private keys to your cloud infrastructure, versus, say, a sales intern is two completely different risks and threat models. And having that accurate baseline allows security to kind of sift through the noise and prioritize alerts. Finance teams have a big investment in inventory asset data around cost analysis and cost savings. They're interested in, are we buying the right systems? Are these systems out for repair too often? Are they working for us? Where can we implement cost savings? Things like that. And then IT, which that's where I live in this slide, that is pretty much like just a standard baseline. We require this data to be accurate across all of our metrics. For example, if a device is showing out of compliance for an older operating system, but the asset tracker tells us, oh, it's out for warranty hardware repairs, having that accurate asset data means we can actually ignore that as noise and focus on devices that are actually in use by actual humans, which is extremely valuable. So today we're going to talk about the Snowflake and ServiceNow connector. This is a new technology we released. It is natively built within the Snowflake applications space itself. You can replicate full fidelity of ServiceNow CMDB tables. And, it gives you like a lot of easy buttons and integrations. You don't need to be a seasoned data engineer or, data scientist to kind of get this data flowing into your Snowflake instance. And on this slide, we'll see a quick video demo of how an end user of Snowflake can pick a single table within the, CMDB table within ServiceNow, and then choose the frequency at which it synchronizes. So this is a type of easy button we've given you. This helps reduce all sorts of labor, and your engineers and your analytics people can focus on actually leveraging the data and less time worrying about how to get the data into Snowflake. So right here, what you'll see is kind of a data lifecycle and a data flow chart. So from left to right, let's kind of go through these. We have different types of asset data coming in, right? So ServiceNow is our source of truth when it comes to what human owns what asset. And then we also ingest event data and API data from our MDMs. And this gives us kind of, what devices are actively checking in. And I'll touch on that in a bit later and how that's important. Ingesting the data, you have many different options. When native connectors exist, like the ServiceNow one, you can leverage that. If your vendor or, software, or developer allows data sharing, you can use native cloud data sharing, and that also is very useful. And then third-party tools like Fivetran, Fivetran makes it super easy to ingest webhooks right into Snowflake. Within Snowflake itself, you'll have all your standard warehouse management. You'll be able to use RBAC policies to assign, different levels of access to different data through, just granting access by roles. And your data transformation comes from streams, tasks, UDFs, and data mapping. So one thing I want to point out here is UDFs, or user-defined functions. If you're like me and you have an IT background, you might be way stronger in like Python than SQL. And so UDFs allow you to leverage things like Python, which is fantastic. Data masking is, you want to share data, but you want to, make sure it's secure and anonymous. And tasks can automate things as well. And the modeling, you'll see something like SnowSQL, which is an application we develop here internally, and allows you, it's a command line interface to Snowflake. And then tools like dbt, which kind of help you just test and build data in your automation pipelines to ensure your data is accurate. And at the very end, you'll see just the different consumption models, right? So different teams will use different tools to visualize and consume this data. It'll be different, every team has a different use case, but I think the one thing to point out here is that all these teams are using the same unified data under the hood, And that allows teams to be on the same page and not have duplicate data floating around their organization. So when I talk about like using a single source of data, Snowflake has a really cool feature called views, which allows you to essentially take some query results and turn them into a table, so to speak, with rows and columns. This allows you to share only the exact data that you want to share, and not have to share everything. So if you're familiar with ServiceNow, there are many, many, many CMDB tables, right? Hundreds to thousands. I lost count when I looked at all the data in ServiceNow. But here in this view, I can join the half a dozen CMDB tables in a single view and then share that across my organization, so teams like security don't have to go model their own data. It also allows us to all be on the same page. You may have been in a situation before where you ask another team for data and they email you a spreadsheet, and then you have to grok that spreadsheet. And then by the time you get done looking at the data is probably 2 weeks old, or maybe even older. And so having this kind of live data view that you can share in Snowflake is extremely valuable. Next slide. It's not going to the next slide, so let me just select it manually maybe. Sorry, my slide won't advance.
I see the next slide, Tom.
You do? Okay. It's not advancing on my screen, so I will just go over. Do you guys see the discover same old problems?
It's on the join asset one. Now it's on the easily discover the same old problems.
There we go. Okay, I think I got it back now. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. Join asset data with event data from MDM. So as I mentioned earlier, we are ingesting MDM webhooks. And what this does is gives us a view of like every single asset that's checking into our MDM software. And this is very useful to catch misses, right? So sometimes you have like a reseller integration and it has an issue or the automation breaks, or maybe you're manually inputting assets into ServiceNow and you mistype a serial number or something. Just by using a simple not exists allows us to check if that serial number has a valid record in our asset tables. And so what this does is this catches when humans make a mistake and mistype a serial number, or if our automation fails and devices didn't get added properly. And so this is a quick way to really leverage multiple data sources to keep your asset data clean and accurate. And so with that, if you're a seasoned IT veteran like me, you may have seen these same old problems, right? These problems have existed for decades now at this point. A common problem is, automation fails and leaves null values or blank values in your asset table. That's not good because that breaks data downstream. And then there's the good old classic barcodes on like Apple laptops, append the beginning of the serial number with the letter S. And if you don't program your barcode scanner to ignore that first character, then you just end up with a bunch of faulty serial numbers. And so these are just two quick and easy examples of how we catch and fix this data. And how we fix it is we actually use ServiceNow to automatically create tickets on this data flow. So when our queries in Snowflake run, we can call an external function through an open source tool that the security automation team here is open source on Snowflake's GitHub called Jeff. And it allows external functions to be called from Snowflake itself. So when we find a serial number that starts with S, we can call an external function. There can be rules in there to automatically create a ticket to our asset team. It creates an incident in ServiceNow. And of course, that ticket data is ingested right back into Snowflake. So now we have ticket metrics on like how often this happens. And we can use that data to investigate these failures and fix them through building more robust automation, or perhaps, fixing a manual process by providing a better process document. And then lastly, on this whole kind of data sharing and multiple data sources, here's an example of a dashboard that we use internally and how it combines several data sources, right? So what we're looking at here is every single laptop and desktop that is assigned to a human. We don't necessarily have the same threat models and same use cases for like conference rooms or digital signage or devices that are marked retired or in stock, or devices that are marked like out for repairs. So we're filtering all of those kind of, I'll call them non-live systems from the asset data itself. And this gives us a very clear view of how many active laptops that are actually being used by actual humans and what their operating system versions are. So we can track things like security patches and things like that. We also track like VIP status and leave of absence and things like that, all in its own little context. So that way you're not chasing your tail and spending a lot of cycles finding out why one laptop hasn't run patches yet because the employee is on a leave of absence, for example. And without further ado, I will hand it over to my colleague, Tammy.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we also use the ServiceNow asset data in security. But before I dive into that, I want to start with some high-level goals and issues that we face. So here at Snowflake, the threat detection team cannot build detections if we don't know what assets are in our environment, and that telemetry isn't available to us. Security logging and monitoring failures is actually number 9 in the OWASP top 10 web application security risks. So our most important goal in threat detection is to detect malicious activity in our environment. We build detections which send alerts to our incident response team. Easy as that, right? Not so much. Threat detection and incident response teams commonly face these issues listed with detection and alerting. There's alert fatigue due to high volume of alerts. Many of those alerts could be low fidelity. They're either benign or false positives. Also not knowing which alerts to investigate first. For example, there are 5 different critical alerts in the queue. Which one do you tackle first? There's also disparate data sources and events. If a malicious actor is moving laterally between systems and also changes accounts and IPs used, how do you know if accounts compromised are by the same actor? And lastly, there's unrecognized potential for alerts that may generate a lot of benign signals, but when correlated with other activity, it generates a story about an actual security event. Having been on both the incident response and threat detection side, I have personally felt and seen how these issues impact our team. Let me tell you, burnout is not pretty. Our strategy to achieve our goal and address these issues is a risk and entity-based approach to alerting, also known as REBA, which relies on asset and identity prioritization for its foundation. This is where the accurate asset inventory data comes in. So asset and identity prioritization is our quantitative approach to assessing risk of assets and identities within our environment. For the purpose of this webinar, I will be focusing only on assets, but you may hear me refer to holistically as AIP. So before we could even begin calculating risks of assets, we needed to identify what is our data source for the asset data. Within Snowflake, we have so many data sets, as Tom mentioned. There's tables and views. We knew that to build a solid foundation for AIP, there should be a single source of truth, and that should be shared across teams for consistency and scalability. We knew that to build, Tom shared with me that with I2's ServiceNow asset inventory, which provided essential information for not only identifying what endpoint assets exist within our environment, but also the asset's owner, status, and purpose. That information directly impacts the risk parameters that are used to calculate the priority score of an asset. What is the environment? Does the asset live in production, development, or testing? The workload priority. Is an asset a consumable, or is it an endpoint, or is it in production? Data type. Does the data that asset hosts contain public, internal only, sensitive, or restricted information? Is the asset expected or not? And is that asset publicly exposed? This could mean either physically or even over the network. We then join that asset data with Jamf or Intune, depending on the endpoint, CrowdStrike, and Tenable to get additional key risk parameters, such as if a security agent is enabled or if there are vulnerabilities on the asset. All of these risk parameters are incorporated into an algorithm that we built to calculate the priority score for each asset. So here's an example of our asset prioritization data built from ServiceNow Asset Inventory. Now I have that first line circled because we'll use that specific owner and asset in examples in the next slide. But if you look at this view, you can see how these different endpoints have an associated owner description and what it is, and the risk parameters that ultimately calculate and impact that priority score of the asset. You can see that because the Zoom Room computer host data that is internal only, since it's only used for meetings and conference calls, right? That it's a lower priority compared to the user endpoints, which have restricted data and also vulnerabilities that drive up the priority of those assets. Now, how is this used? How's this prioritization used in security? So we have a threat detection lifecycle here at Snowflake, and that asset inventory is relevant to every stage of this lifecycle. It starts with gathering requirements for the detection. If the telemetry doesn't exist, building a detection is almost a non-starter. How can you develop detections if you don't know who or what you're trying to detect? When the telemetry is available, the threat detection engineer can then design the detection to surface the asset and priority data, develop the detection, test it, and then finally deploy it. Detections are monitored and continually tested for not only performance, but also the relevance of that entity data. Here is an example of the asset data surfaced within the entities of the detection. We have a novel way of parsing entities in our detections natively in Snowflake. The entities include, but are not limited to those entities listed, such as username, email, and machine ID. The detection is then joined with the asset model on the entity data to incorporate the asset prioritization into the alert risk score. So more specifically, we use the entity prioritization score to calculate the risk score of an alert when an alert is triggered that involves that entity. So if you remember John Doe from a few slides ago that I had circled, turns out he's an insider threat and is doing some reconnaissance on security tools installed on his endpoint. When he checks the settings of Little Snitch in his terminal, he triggered some threat detections, which surfaced information related to his entity. You see his email, IP address, and machine ID of his endpoint. The priority score associated with his entity, along with a detection likelihood score, is then used to calculate the individual risk score of the alert that fired, 50. Now you may ask, why, if the risk score is 50, why does it say 150 at the top? So 50 is the risk score for this one alert that fired. With risk and entity-based alerting, if you remember Reba, the entity aggregates risk based on all the detections that are triggered for that entity in a given period of time. So let's dive into Reba next. Risk and entity-based alerting is a methodology that we built within Snowflake that aggregates security events to create an alert narrative based on the entity involved. The AIP risk factor is the entity prioritization score, and the AIP risk object is the object of the entity prioritization score. The other parameters include detection likelihood. So how likely is that specific malicious activity to occur? Signal strength is the confidence level of the detection based off of its alert fidelity and history, and sequencing based off of the threat intelligence kill chain. All of these parameters can impact the alert's risk score. This is the risk score of 50 that we saw earlier, right? The total risk score increased to 150 because John Doe ran other commands in his terminal, which generated 2 additional atomic alerts that had individual risk scores of also 50 each. Risk and entity-based alerting aggregates those alerts on John Doe's entities to generate 1 REBA alert with a score of 150 rather than 3 atomic alerts. So now why is this important? You can see that 1 REBA alert for John Doe in the incident response queue among the other alerts generated for different entities. This is why it is absolutely critical that the entity data we use in AIP and REBA, such as Tom's ServiceNow asset inventory, is accurate. So the priority of the alert that the incident response team responds to and investigates is actually in the order that is representative of the risk that that entity has to our Snowflake environment. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Tammy. So, asset inventory utilization is something that is really fundamental across your organization. In fact, I use it as a baseline for every query I write around endpoints here at Snowflake. The first thing I want to do when I tackle any side of data-related workflow or data, just integration, is that I want to contextualize my data. I want to know what primary and secondary systems are assigned to actual employees are doing. And then all the other ones that are marked as in stock or out for repairs or a different type of asset state. I don't want to get rid of that data. I want to contextualize it. So, having this baseline of accurate data is just fundamental for everything we do here. And many teams here at Snowflake leverage this data, right? CorpSec and product security, right? They want to know what assets are accessing critical systems here. Threat detection and incident response. Tammy did a great job of going over kind of how both those teams use that, right? And then compliance, right? So when you go through any type of compliance audit or compliance exercise, being able to filter out all of these systems that aren't in use by actual humans really helps the compliance people get through audits a lot quicker. And of course, finance. Finance is, they always want to make sure that the business is spending the proper amount of money in the proper places. And so giving them, this asset data helps them forecast budgeting, helps them kind of figure out if we're, over under speccing systems, or maybe we purchase a specific brand or a specific model of laptop that is just constantly out for repairs. And our total cost of ownership has skyrocketed. And, finance wants to spend the money in better places. So it's really just fundamental. And having a single view of assets allows you to data share that across Snowflake, and putting your ServiceNow data in Snowflake, I guess is cool. And it's maybe it gives you a bit more of analytics ability, but really the true magic comes from joining that data to other data sources and then building robust data workflows, metrics, analytics, and visualizing that data for teams to consume. And just a real quick, to wrap it all up, let's go over some key takeaways here, right? So Snowflake really allows for cross-team collaboration. I've been in tech for over 20 years, and I've never worked as closely or as much with the security teams here as I have at any other job previously. And that's just because the nature of data sharing really helps drive cross-team collaboration. And it's an amazing thing because people get people get to collaborate on what the data means. Also, like, you can bring in subject matter experts. If I have a question on the security data, I can reach out to the security team and be like, hey, we're looking at this asset data, but we want to join it to the security data. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Data sharing also really reduces duplication of effort. At previous jobs, or maybe you've experienced this, you might have like eight teams doing similar things and with overlap. And now you have this like duplication of effort. Also, like, asset inventory data is tough. It's tough to keep accurate. It's tough to data check. And having all these different data sources like MDMs and security agents, and you joining that to the inventory asset data is just amazing. And it really comes down to Snowflake. Snowflake can really empower you and enable you to accomplish all these things. And I've used other data products in the past, and I've had other integrations into various ticket systems and asset systems. And this tool here, this platform here, really just allows you to just do the maximum you can with the data. And now we're up for Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks for that great presentation, Tom and Tammy. And for the participants, please put in your questions in the Q&A chat box. I see a few that are coming in. So first one would be, where can I learn more about this? What are some resources that people can go to?
That's a great question. Snowflake has an online community where you can go engage with other Snowflake users, and it has a lot of great information. Snowflake also offers a really good training course. If you're new to Snowflake and data, they have a fundamentals course you can join. And I've taken it personally. It's a great course, and we have great instructors here. We also have our Snowflake Summit, which if you can go talk to many Snowflake customers and watch a lot of more in-depth presentations.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I think we have like a full cybersecurity track at Summit with lots of great sessions. The next question would be, can you ingest other types of asset data into Snowflake other than ServiceNow?
Yes, depending on the application, right? If the vendor offers native data sharing, then it's already there. If they have a REST API where you can consume data, or webhooks where you can consume data, that's all also ingestible into Snowflake through Snowflake's various data pipelines, or third-party data tools like Fivetran. And of course, if Snowflake has a native connector, it's easy mode, right? It's just clicking a button.
Awesome. I have a question coming in about REBA, or REBA. Is this available as a feature, and how can customers get started with asset data for enriching investigations?
Yeah, so we can certainly share our framework and consult you about your about our experience, tips, and tricks. But we are unable to share the code at this time since it's proprietary to Snowflake. But you could reach out to your Snowflake rep for more questions about that. The Snowflake security team also put out initial Medium blog post speaking about our strategy, and you can find some guidance there. It should be linked in the chat box. And we'll probably have a webinar with a deeper dive into the nuts and bolts of REBA and AIP in the future. So stay tuned on that.
Awesome. Another question on REBA. Are you building your REBA framework and associated alerts directly via Snowflake features or via another tool layered on top?
Yeah, so REBA, that's a great question. REBA is built directly on Snowflake itself. In regards to the alerting aspects, That is not built in Snowflake, but you can use Snow Alert, which is built on Snowflake, and that's open source as well. You can use other case management systems like Jira or Retool as well, whatever alerting system that you choose.
Awesome. And then someone asked if they missed it, do we have a native connector with ServiceNow?
Yes, we just launched a native connector with ServiceNow. If you get a copy of the slide deck, there'll be kind of an overall general info slide and then a quick time video of how an end user can ingest selected tables from ServiceNow right into Snowflake.
Someone asked if they can choose just some of the fields out of the table to ingest.
Oh, I actually don't know the answer to that one. I think it's tables. We'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay. And then I have a few people asking for going back to like the data flow slide or asking for slides. Those will be sent to your inbox within 24 hours with the recording as well. All right, well, I think those are all of our questions today. And if you have more, please reach out to us and we'll try to get back to you. Thank you, Tom and Tammy, for this awesome presentation on ServiceNow asset data. This was really, really great. And thanks everyone else for joining as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Tammy and Tom, thank you both so much for joining us. I know we had to cut things a little bit short, but I really appreciate y'all being here with us. I would like to remind our audience that our session today was recorded. Following this program, you will receive an email with a link to access the recording on demand. Or, of course, you can find it living on the Security Boulevard website at securityboulevard.com/webinars. And be sure to look in the on-demand section where you'll find it waiting for you. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing, they are Matthew S., Sharon H., Kurt M., and Luther M. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim your gift card. It should make its way over to you in about 48 hours, if not sooner. If you don't happen to see that email, check your spam folder just in case it happens to get filtered out. I'd like to thank Snowflake for sponsoring our program. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you spending time with us, and we would love to hear your feedback today. So as soon as we close out, there will be a survey that pops up. I've also just posted a link to it in our chat if you want to go ahead and navigate over to that now. But we do want to hear your feedback, whether it's about this program or any upcoming program suggestions. We do want to hear your thoughts. Either way, we hope to see everyone at a future Techstrong learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect.